Have you ever experienced a moment where your sense of self, your ego, shattered into pieces? That unsettling yet profound experience can feel like chaos, but it's often the crucial first step toward true transformation. According to Jung, the renowned psychologist, the breakdown of our ego isn't the end. It's the beginning of a deeper journey into understanding ourselves. In this video, we'll explore how the collapse of the ego acts as a catalyst for growth, awakening, and finally, authentic selfhood. Prepare to delve into the transformative power hidden within the chaos of ego dissolution. Let's uncover how you can turn these moments of upheaval into the most profound shifts of your life. The ego is often misunderstood as simply being our self-image or the role we play in society. But in truth, it is far more complex and foundational to our sense of identity. At its core, the ego serves as the center of our conscious experience. It is the mental framework through which we interpret the world around us, construct our personal narrative, and establish a sense of continuity and stability in our lives. Everything we perceive about ourselves, our name, our personality traits, our beliefs, and our memories, are integrated into this mental construct we call the ego. Jung described the ego as the center of consciousness. It is the part of ourselves that we are aware of. Our thoughts, feelings, desires, and perceptions that form our personal identity. Think of it as the captain of the ship. It helps us navigate daily life, make decisions, and find purpose. Without the ego, our sense of self would be fragmented or chaotic, and we might feel lost in the vast sea of unconscious possibilities. However, this vital function of the ego comes with limitations. One of the fundamental issues with the ego is that it tends to define itself narrowly. It likes to maintain control, seek safety, and establish a familiar sense of identity by reinforcing what it already believes about who we are. This often leads to resistance, resisting change, discomfort, or anything that threatens the delicate balance of our self-image. For example, if someone receives criticism that challenges their ego, they might respond defensively to preserve their sense of self. Furthermore, the ego is inherently an illusion in the grander scope of human consciousness. It's a constructed identity, a story we tell ourselves which is, in large part, based on memories, societal labels, and personal conditioning. It depends heavily on external validation, comparisons, and judgments to feel secure. We often go through life acting in ways that serve its preservation, even if those actions are not truly aligned with our more authentic selves. One crucial aspect to understand about the ego is that it is not inherently bad or good. It is simply a part of our psychological makeup. Problems arise when the ego becomes overly rigid, overly identified with certain roles, beliefs, or possessions, making us excessively attached to these superficial aspects of ourselves. This attachment creates a false sense of security, but also leads to suffering when life inevitably changes or challenges this fragile construct. In addition, the ego fosters separation, an us versus them mentality that can result in feelings of alienation, egocentric thinking, and a distorted sense of reality. It is this sense of separation that fuels much of the conflict and dissatisfaction experienced in life. For many, their ego becomes a barrier to inner peace, authentic connection, and spiritual growth because it keeps them rooted in the illusion of a fixed, separate self. Understanding the nature of the ego is vital for anyone on a path of self-discovery and transformation. By recognizing that the ego is a mental construct, that it's not the essence of who we truly are, we can begin to see its limits. The ego is like a mask that we wear to navigate our social world. But beneath that mask lies a deeper, more expansive awareness, an intrinsic sense of being that is not defined by external labels or internal stories. The key to transformative growth is not to eliminate the ego entirely. That's neither practical nor necessary, but to understand its role and limitations. When we see the ego clearly, we no longer identify completely with it. Instead, we develop a capacity to observe our ego in action, allowing us to detach from its constant chatter and control. This awareness creates space for deeper parts of ourselves to emerge, our authentic self, which is unconditioned and boundless. In essence, the ego is a starting point on our journey. It is both a helping hand and an obstacle, depending on our level of awareness. When we learn to understand and relate to our ego without blindly clinging to it, we open the door to profound inner transformation, one that dissolves the false self and reveals the deeper truths of our being. Hence, recognizing what the ego truly is becomes the first crucial step in the process of spiritual awakening and personal evolution. Recognizing the early signs that your ego is breaking down can be both challenging and revealing. These signs often arrive unexpectedly, disrupting the comfort of your familiar identity and urging you to confront aspects of yourself you may have been avoiding. One of the most common experiences in this phase is profound disillusionment, sudden realizations that your previous beliefs, pursuits, or self-image no longer hold the same meaning or stability they once did. It can feel like the ground beneath your feet has shifted, leaving you questioning everything you thought was true. You might notice persistent feelings of restlessness or unease, even when your external circumstances seem stable. This inner discomfort often signals that your ego's protective mechanisms are starting to weaken, revealing cracks in the illusion of control that you may have clung to. For instance, you may find yourself losing interest in things that once gave you pleasure or satisfaction, experiencing a sense of emptiness or apathy. This is not necessarily depression, but rather a sign that your ego's attachments are no longer fulfilling the deeper longing for authenticity and connection. A common indicator of ego disintegration is an increasing sense of vulnerability and exposure. As your ego begins to dissolve, old defenses, such as arrogance, defensiveness, or self-justification, may gradually give way to feelings of raw openness or even paranoia. You might become hyper-aware of the judgments others make about you, or of your own inner critic's relentless voice criticizing your every move. This heightened sensitivity can feel uncomfortable, but also serves as a vital cue that your ego is losing its grip and is in the process of transformation. Another sign is losing the sense of identity that you once held onto tightly. For many, this manifests as a feeling of being lost or a fading of the defining labels like successful, worthy, or important. You might question your roles. Are you truly the career person, the parent, the friend, or the artist that you thought you were? When these identities start to crumble, it can be frightening but also liberating, as it unveils the possibility of discovering a much deeper self that isn't confined by external accolades or societal expectations. You may also experience moments of confusion and internal chaos, as the familiar mental patterns and routines no longer provide the same sense of reassurance. Thoughts may become restless or repetitive, and old beliefs may seem increasingly fragile. This mental turbulence is a natural part of the ego's disintegration. It's as if the old mental structures are being dismantled, brick by brick, to make space for something new. During this process, it is common to feel a sense of emptiness or a lack of purpose, which can lead to existential questioning. Who am I really? What is the meaning of life beyond my roles and possessions? Feelings of frustration and impatience often emerge when the ego begins to fall apart. It can be uncomfortable to relinquish a cherished sense of control or certainty. You might find yourself resisting change or clinging desperately to familiar routines, hoping to restore the sense of stability that is slipping away. This resistance is, in truth, the ego's last-ditch effort to maintain its narrative and protect its fragile sense of identity. Recognizing this resistance as a natural response, rather than a sign of failure, is crucial for allowing the transformation to proceed. A further sign is heightened sensitivity toward external triggers, people, environments, or situations that previously might have gone unnoticed or been easily dismissed. Now, you may notice certain interactions or circumstances causing disproportionate emotional reactions: anger, shame, fear, or sadness, pointing to the ego's fragile state. These emotional storms are often indicators that you are being pushed out of your habitual comfort zones and into deeper layers of your subconscious. Experiencing déjà vu, or a sense that life is repeating itself, can also be a signal that your ego is dissolving barriers. Similarly, feeling disconnected from your usual sense of self or out of sync with your surroundings can be subtle yet persistent symptoms. Some people describe an uncanny feeling of being in a transition zone, neither entirely the person they used to be, nor fully someone new, caught in the liminal space of transformation. It's important to note that all these signs are part of a natural and necessary process. They are signals that the ego, which has served as a psychological container for the self, is no longer sufficient for the deeper awakening that awaits. They can be intense and disorienting, but they also create an opening, an invitation, to go beyond the superficial identity and explore the core of your being. If you pay close attention to these signs, you will find that they serve as invaluable guides on your journey. They indicate that your current self-image or worldview is being challenged or deconstructed, paving the way for a more authentic, expansive understanding of who you are. Embracing these signs rather than resisting them allows for a smoother transition through this transitional phase, setting the stage for profound inner growth. When the ego begins to dissolve and the familiar structures of identity are shattering, it often catapults us into the most profound and challenging phase of inner transformation, confronting our shadow. The shadow, a concept deeply rooted in Jungian psychology, represents the parts of ourselves that we have rejected, suppressed, or denied. Those aspects we find uncomfortable, unacceptable, or inconvenient. Facing this darkness is not only essential for authentic growth, but also the most profound act of courage and self-awareness in the process of spiritual and psychological awakening. Many people are initially unaware of their shadow. It quietly lurks beneath conscious awareness, often disguised by projections onto others or external circumstances. When the ego begins to fracture, however, these repressed facets can flood into consciousness, demanding acknowledgement. This process can be startling, even terrifying, as it uncovers everything we have tried to hide about ourselves: our fears, our shame, our anger, our envy, and our guilt. It is as if a mirror is held up to the hidden corners of our psyche, revealing truths we may have long avoided. The process of confronting the shadow often begins with a series of unexpected emotional outbursts or reactions, which seem disproportionate to the situation at hand. For example, minor inconveniences may trigger overwhelming anger, resentment, or despair. These intense reactions are often signs that the neglected parts of ourselves are breaking free from their unconscious confines, clamoring for recognition. It can be tempting to blame external circumstances or other people for these emotional flare-ups, but in reality, they are internal signals that your shadow is surfacing. As you delve deeper, you may start to notice recurring themes, patterns of behavior or thought that repeatedly lead to feelings of shame, guilt, or self-criticism. Perhaps you realize that a deeply rooted jealousy or bitterness has been lurking beneath your conscious awareness, influencing your relationships and decisions. Recognizing these patterns is a crucial step because it creates the opportunity for integration. Instead of pushing these parts away or suppressing them further, acknowledging their existence is the foundation of healing. Facing your shadow requires a willingness to look into the darkest corners of your psyche with honesty and compassion. This is rarely comfortable. It involves an internal reckoning that can bring up painful memories, unresolved traumas, or long-held beliefs about yourself. You may encounter images or feelings from your past that you have repressed or forgotten, and these can evoke feelings of shame or guilt. It's important to remember that shadow work is not about blame or self-judgment, but about acceptance. Recognizing that these repressed parts are simply aspects of your human experience helps shift the perspective from shame to understanding. The process can be further complicated by the tendency to project our shadow onto others. When confronted with someone's behavior we dislike or judge harshly, it's often not entirely about them. Instead, it is a reflection of our own shadow. Those qualities we refuse to own within ourselves, but see so clearly in someone else. Developing awareness of projection is essential because it allows us to take responsibility for our internal universe and begin the healing process from within. Another significant obstacle in shadow work is the fear of losing control. We are so accustomed to suppressing certain emotions or traits because they threaten our preferred self-image or social standing. Facing these parts head-on demands vulnerability and the willingness to accept discomfort. It might feel like exposing raw wounds, but doing so ultimately leads to liberation. As Jung emphasized, integrating the shadow is a process of becoming whole, embracing all facets of ourselves, even those we dislike or fear. This confrontation is often catalyzed by existential crises, feelings of despair, or a deep sense that life as you knew it is no longer working. During these moments, old beliefs about who you are challenged, and you may question the very foundation of your identity. It's common to experience episodes of depression or emotional numbness, which serve as signals that you are diving into the depths of your unconscious. These phases are akin to spiritual purgatories, challenging but necessary for deep rebirth. Throughout this process, patience and self-compassion are crucial. Shadow work can be an intense emotional roller coaster, with periods of intense insight followed by feelings of overwhelm or exhaustion. It's important to recognize that you are not alone, and support, whether through meditation, therapy, journal writing, or spiritual practices, can be invaluable. Creating a safe space within yourself and seeking external support can make confronting your shadows more manageable. In essence, facing your shadow is an act of courage, an acknowledgement that truth cannot be avoided forever. It is about accepting all parts of yourself, even those you wish to hide away. This act of acceptance does not mean becoming complacent or identifying exclusively with these darknesses, but rather recognizing them as integral to your full human experience. When you integrate your shadow, you dissolve internal contradictions, reduce projection onto others, and begin to cultivate genuine compassion. The journey toward wholeness, as conceptualized by Carl Jung, is best described by the term individuation, the process of becoming the true, authentic self. It is not merely about personal growth or self-improvement, but about integrating all aspects of our being, our conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, personal and collective. This process is fundamental to understanding how the disintegration of the ego facilitates the emergence of a deeper, more comprehensive self that transcends superficial identities. Individuation begins when the ego, which has often served as the organizer of our conscious life, starts to break down or is challenged severely. As we discussed earlier, the ego is a mental construct. It is based on our personal memories, societal roles, beliefs, and perceptions that define our identity in the superficial sense. While the ego provides us with a sense of continuity and stability, it also creates limitations because it tends to identify with specific roles, ideas, and possessions. The disintegration or destabilization of the ego is therefore a necessary precondition for individuation because it forces us to look beyond these limited identities. In the depths of this process lies a vital understanding. True selfhood is not found in the ego or in external accomplishments, but in the unconscious. The deeper layers of our psyche, that contain the archetypes and universal symbols shared by all human beings. The ego, then, is only a small surface layer, a facade that shields the vast, often hidden depths of the unconscious. When the ego begins to crack, it exposes these deeper layers, urging us to explore and integrate parts of ourselves that have long been suppressed or ignored. This confrontation with the unconscious during ego disintegration acts as a catalyst for individuation, pushing us towards psychological wholeness. The breakdown of the ego is often experienced as a crisis, an internal upheaval that disrupts our usual way of being, but paradoxically opens the door for authentic growth. It's akin to a chrysalis opening up to reveal a butterfly. What once seemed like chaos now holds the seed of transformation. As the ego dissolves, unconscious contents rise to the surface. Symbols, dreams, spontaneous insights, and even emotional upheavals. These symbols and messages from the unconscious serve as guides, leading us on the path toward integrating all parts of ourselves. Jung believed that the psyche seeks wholeness, a harmonious integration of opposing forces, and this process involves unifying our conscious identity with the unconscious depths of our being. An essential aspect of individuation is the recognition that our psychological development does not end with simply dissolving the ego, but involves a conscious effort to relate to and incorporate the contents of the unconscious. This includes embracing our shadow, honoring our instincts, and cultivating a relationship with archetypal figures and symbols that emerge from deep within our psyche. These symbols often manifest in dreams, fantasies, art, or spontaneous feelings, acting as messengers and signposts on the journey towards self-realization. Throughout this process, the ego acts as a sort of anchor, keeping us grounded in our conscious awareness as the unconscious forces threaten to destabilize us. The tension between the ego and the unconscious creates a dynamic interplay that propels us forward in our growth. The ego must relinquish its dominance, gradually allowing the deeper self, an unconditioned, limitless aspect, to emerge and influence our conscious life. Embracing the process of individuation means cultivating an open mindset toward the unknown parts of ourselves. It involves surrendering the need for complete control and embracing the uncertainty that comes with psychological transformation. It's about becoming comfortable with ambiguity, paradox, and the contrast between light and shadow. As we relinquish our attachment to a fixed identity, we discover the fluid, ever-evolving nature of the self, a phenomenon not limited by the ego's boundaries. The journey of individuation is marked by a series of milestones, moments of insight, inner realizations, and the gradual integration of previously rejected parts of ourselves. This process often unfolds over many years, or even a lifetime. It can be tough, sometimes lonely, and filled with setbacks, but each challenge is an integral part of forging a more authentic and whole self. Importantly, Jung emphasized that individuation is not a destination, but a continuous, ongoing process. Even after parts of the unconscious are integrated, new layers of the self may reveal themselves, calling us deeper into the mystery of who we are. The ultimate aim isn't to reach a fixed state of perfection, but to evolve consciously, to embrace our full being, and realize our unity with the totality of life. In essence, the disintegration of the ego is a necessary rite of passage, a death of the limited persona that has kept us safe but also confined us. It clears the way for a more expansive consciousness, where the ego no longer dominates, but rather serves as a guide in partnership with the deeper self. When the ego begins to disintegrate, what often follows is a period of profound chaos, an unpredictable and turbulent journey into the depths of the unconscious. This phase can feel like being lost in a storm, with no clear direction, no familiar landmarks, and a sense of disorientation that can be overwhelming. However, within this chaos lies a vital opportunity. a doorway into deep self-discovery and authentic transformation, if approached with awareness and courage. Embracing chaos requires a fundamental shift in how we perceive stability and control. Society encourages us to seek certainty, predictability, and stability in our lives, to create routines and structures that shield us from the unpredictable. Yet, in the process of profound inner growth, these very structures often become barriers, preventing us from exploring the uncharted territories of our psyche. Recognizing chaos not as an enemy, but as a necessary evolution of our consciousness, is a key step in this journey. When the familiar ego dissolves, the old mental frameworks and identities no longer serve us. This sudden loss of familiar reference points, our beliefs about who we are, what we want, and how the world works, can be destabilizing. The mind naturally resists this upheaval because it craves order and certainty. Yet it's precisely in surrendering to the chaos that the seeds of transformation are planted. At first, this chaos manifests as internal confusion, rapid shifts in mood, conflicting thoughts, and a sense of internal fragmentation. Feelings such as anxiety, despair, or irritability become familiar companions as the mind struggles to make sense of the new reality that is beyond its control. Old coping mechanisms, which once provided temporary relief, may no longer work, leaving us feeling helpless or deeply vulnerable. This vulnerability exposes the raw core of our being, a space where our false narratives and surface-level identities are stripped away. Embracing this chaos involves developing an attitude of curiosity rather than resistance. Instead of fighting against the disorienting feelings or attempting to impose order prematurely, it is more helpful to lean into the experience with open awareness. Observe the turbulence without judgment, recognizing it as a natural part of the transformation process. The chaos is not an accident or a failure, but a necessary stage that propels us beyond the ego's limitations. It acts as a fertile ground for surrender, humility, and deep questioning. The willingness to embrace chaos often involves relinquishing the illusion that we can perfectly control the unfolding of our inner world. This surrender is not passive resignation, but an active trust in the process of transformation. Sometimes the chaos resembles a birth canal. It is messy, uncomfortable, and chaotic, but through it, new life, the emergence of a higher self, can be born. This metaphor speaks to the idea that profound growth often requires us to face the dark, turbulent waters of transition to reach the clarity of a new consciousness. Within this chaos, spontaneous insights, symbolic dreams, and intuitive flashes begin to surface, clues that guide us toward integration and wholeness. It's important to pay close attention to these signs, as they carry wisdom from the depths of our unconscious. Journaling, meditation, or creative expression can help decode these signals, transforming chaos into meaningful internal dialogue. Fear of chaos is often rooted in the need for security, familiarity, and predictability. Yet, without venturing into the unknown, growth remains limited. One way to foster resilience during this tumultuous phase is to cultivate mindfulness, paying close attention to present-moment experiences with compassion and detachment. This allows us to witness the storm within without becoming completely overwhelmed by it. Over time, we develop the inner strength and patience needed to navigate the unpredictable landscape of transformation. Another crucial aspect of embracing chaos is recognizing its role in shedding outdated beliefs, attachments, and identities that no longer serve our highest good. Just as a forest fire clears dead wood, chaos burns away the accumulated debris that obscures our true nature. This clearing creates the space needed for new growth, more authentic passions, deeper insights, and a sense of purpose rooted in our core self rather than superficial egoic pursuits. In this process, it's natural to feel compelled to seek external reassurance or comfort, but real growth comes from turning inward, trusting the process, and accepting the impermanence of all things. The chaos teaches us that life is fundamentally unpredictable, and that surrender is the path to true stability. The more we resist this truth, the more prolonged and intense our suffering becomes. Through embracing chaos, we learn resilience, an inner capacity to stay centered amid turbulence. We come to understand that chaos is not the enemy, but a vital teacher, providing opportunities to release false stories, surface hidden fears, and discover latent strengths. The discomfort experienced in chaos is temporary. By embracing it fully, we open ourselves to a natural cycle of death and rebirth, an essential process for authentic transformation. After enduring the tumultuous phases of chaos, shadow confrontation, and surrender, a profound transformation begins to reveal itself, the birth of the true self. This moment is often described as an awakening, a liberation from the illusion of separateness, and a recognition of the deeper, unchanging core of our being. It is as if the fog of illusion lifts, and the individual begins to see through the illusion of a limited self, and instead perceives a vast, interconnected consciousness that has always been present beneath the surface. The emergence of the true self is not a sudden event, but a gradual unveiling, a blossoming that unfolds over time as layers of false identity peel away, revealing the authentic essence hidden beneath. This essence is often described as unconditioned, eternal, and inherently complete. It is the aspect of us that exists beyond the fluctuating thoughts, emotions, roles, and beliefs that once defined our identity. When we begin to access this deeper reality, everything shifts. Life takes on a new dimension of meaning, purpose, and peace. One of the most notable signs of this emergence is a sense of inner spaciousness and freedom. Old fears, anxieties, and rigid self-images lose their grip over us, replaced by a profound realization that we are not our thoughts or feelings, but the awareness underlying them all. This realization often comes through direct insight or intuitive experiences, sudden flashes of clarity when we see ourselves beyond the confines of egoic identity. It's like waking from a long, complicated dream to discover an unshakable presence that has always been there, quietly observing everything without judgment. People experience this awakening in various ways. Some feel their sense of separateness dissolve, leading to feelings of unity, even with all of existence. Others describe a deep connection to the present moment, a state of being fully immersed in life without the filtering lens of ego. Many report a sense of unconditional love for themselves and others, born out of the recognition that beneath the surface differences lies a shared core of consciousness. This awareness often brings about an overwhelming sense of compassion and acceptance, not only for others, but for oneself. The physical sensations accompanying this awakening can be profound: warmth in the chest, a tingling or expanding sensation, or an overwhelming sense of peace. These are signs that the ego's grip has loosened sufficiently, allowing the true self to surface. This self is not an individual in the conventional sense, but an essential aspect of universal consciousness, an aspect of ourselves that is interconnected with the entire fabric of existence. Recognizing this interconnectedness dissolves feelings of isolation and fosters a deep sense of belonging. As this new awareness deepens, it naturally reshapes our priorities and values. What once seemed vital, material possessions, external accolades, or superficial achievements, lose their significance. Instead, the focus shifts toward inner growth, authentic expression, and compassionate service. Life becomes less about ego-driven pursuits of success, and more about alignment with the deeper calling of our true nature. This awakening often brings an increased capacity for presence and mindfulness. The mind no longer battles against the present moment, but flows with it effortlessly. Thoughts and emotions still arise, but they are now observed with gentle detachment rather than identification. The sense of self is no longer threatened by these fluctuations, but remains stable, an unwavering witness to all of life's phenomena. One of the most beautiful aspects of this phase is the emergence of a natural sense of wonder and reverence for life. When we perceive ourselves as part of a vast, intelligent consciousness, awe blossoms spontaneously. Every moment becomes an opportunity for discovery, gratitude, and deep appreciation. Nature, art, relationships, and even ordinary daily experiences are imbued with a sacred quality that was previously hidden by ego's illusions. This deeper self also fundamentally redefines our relationship with death. When we recognize that the essence of who we are is eternal and unchanging, fears of mortality diminish. We no longer cling to fleeting forms or possessions because we understand that our true self exists beyond the physical body and mind, steadfast, infinite, and timeless. This realization invites us into a state of acceptance and surrender, making death not an end but a transition, a return to the source from which all life originates. The emergence of the true self often spurs a desire to live more authentically and consciously. There is an inner compulsion to shed remaining superficial layers and to cultivate qualities such as compassion, humility, kindness, and patience. Relationships tend to deepen, becoming less about ego validation and more about genuine connection. Creative expression flourishes, fueled by a sense of inner truth and inspiration. Life no longer feels like a series of reactions to external stimuli, but a conscious unfolding of the deeper self, expressed through thoughts, words, and actions. Yet, this awakening is also accompanied by a recognition that the journey does not stop here. The new level of awareness beckons us into ongoing growth, refinement, and integration. Navigating the tumultuous waters of ego disintegration and emerging into a new sense of self requires both courage and practical wisdom. While the profound internal shifts can be overwhelming, there are concrete strategies and mindful practices that can help guide you through this process with grace and resilience. The first step is cultivating a gentle awareness, an attitude of curiosity rather than resistance, toward whatever arises within you. When the old self-image begins to dissolve, instead of fighting it or fearing the chaos, learn to observe these changes with compassion and patience. Recognize that this is a natural phase of growth, and your willingness to stay present and non-judgmental is your greatest asset. Grounding yourself in mindfulness is crucial during this phase. Practices such as meditation, deep breathing exercises, or simply tuning into your body can help anchor you amid internal storms. When thoughts storm or emotions swell, gently bring your attention back to your breath or bodily sensations. This creates a safe internal space, a point of stability that remains rooted even as the external and internal environments shift unpredictably. Regular mindfulness practice enhances your capacity to observe your experiences objectively, reducing reactivity and fostering clarity. Journaling is another powerful tool. Writing down your feelings, thoughts, dreams, and insights can help you process what's happening internally. When you externalize your internal chaos, patterns and themes often emerge, providing valuable clues for deeper understanding. Journaling also makes it easier to track subtle shifts over time, allowing you to witness your growth and acknowledge progress, even when it feels incremental. Additionally, engaging with nature can be profoundly grounding and restorative. Spending time outdoors, walking in forests, sitting by water, or simply observing the sky connects you to something far greater than the ego. Nature's rhythms remind us of the natural cycles of growth, decay, and renewal. Allow yourself to immerse in these environments without expectations, simply observing and being present. This reconnection to the natural world reinforces a sense of trust in the process and reminds you that chaos is a temporary phase in a larger cycle. Seeking support during this intense time is vital. You might consider talking with trusted friends, family members, or mentors who understand or are sympathetic to your journey. Professional guidance, such as therapy, especially modalities like Jungian analysis, holds immense value because it provides a safe space to explore difficult emotions and unconscious material. A skilled therapist can help you navigate the challenging aspects of ego dissolution, providing insight, reassurance, and tools for integration. Complementing external support, spiritual practices such as prayer, chanting, or engaging with sacred texts can deepen your connection to a higher power or universal consciousness. These practices foster surrender, an essential aspect of navigating chaos, and help cultivate trust that the process is unfolding exactly as it should. Remember, many spiritual traditions emphasize that surrendering to the divine or universal flow is the key to transcending suffering and disorientation. Building routines that promote stability is also important. While it may seem counterintuitive during a phase of upheaval, establishing gentle daily habits can provide a sense of continuity. Simple practices such as mindful eating, regular sleep patterns, or daily stretches can help anchor you emotionally and physically. Avoid making drastic life changes abruptly. Instead, incorporate small, manageable adjustments that support your well-being. Self-compassion must underpin every step of this journey. Recognize that ego disintegration and the ensuing chaos are not signs of personal failure, but necessary steps toward authenticity. When feelings of shame or frustration arise, treat yourself with kindness. Practice self-soothing techniques, such as gentle touch, affirmations, or guided meditations, that reinforce your inner safety and worth. Celebrate your courage for facing these inner storms, and remind yourself that transformation, while challenging, is ultimately sacred work. Another powerful practice is consciously accepting uncertainty. Instead of seeking certainty or desperately clinging to old beliefs, cultivate an attitude of open curiosity. Embrace the unknown as a fertile ground for growth, rather than something to fear or resist. Meditation that focuses on surrender, letting go of attachment to outcomes, can reinforce this openness. Affirmations like, "I trust the process," or "I surrender to what is," can help rewire your mindset toward acceptance. As the chaos begins to subside, consciously integrate the insights and lessons gained. Reflection practices, such as contemplating dreams, intuitive impressions, or metaphorical insights, can deepen your understanding of the transformation occurring within. Recognize that every fluctuation, every emotional upheaval, carries a message from your deeper self and is a vital step toward inner wholeness. Practicing patience is perhaps the most vital element. Inner transformation does not follow a strict timeline. It unfolds in its own time and rhythm. Honor your unique process without comparison or pressure. Trust that each phase, from turmoil to clarity, is purposeful and necessary. Sometimes taking a step back, literally pausing and giving yourself space, allows more clarity to emerge. As we reach the culmination of this journey, I want to remind you that transformation is an ongoing adventure, an unfolding process that continues well beyond the closing moments of this video. If this exploration has resonated with you, and you've begun to sense the profound shifts happening within, then remember, you are not alone. The path of awakening and inner growth is a shared journey, and there are countless others walking similar terrains, seeking to illuminate their true nature, just as you are. If you've found value in this discussion, whether it sparked new insights, offered comfort amidst confusion, or inspired you to look deeper into yourself, then I invite you to take the next step. To stay connected, to continue exploring these profound themes of self-discovery, and to deepen your understanding, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. By subscribing, you become part of a community committed to awakening, growth, and authentic living. You'll gain access to a steady stream of content designed to support, challenge, and inspire your inner journey. Meditations, deep dives into Jungian psychology, spiritual teachings, practical tools, and much more. Subscribing is more than just clicking a button. It's a commitment to yourself, a vow to prioritize your inner development and to remain open to the endless possibilities of personal evolution. When you subscribe, you empower yourself to integrate the insights shared here, to reflect on your experiences, and to connect with a community of like-minded explorers who understand the significance of this transformative process. Remember, transformation isn't a one-time event, it's a lifelong voyage. Each day presents new opportunities, moments of insight, challenges that test our resilience, and experiences that deepen our understanding of who we truly are. By subscribing, you're setting an intention to continue this journey. You're choosing to invest in your growth, in your healing, and in the discovery of your authentic self. Additionally, I invite you to participate actively in this community. Share your stories, your questions, and your breakthroughs in the comments section. Your insights not only help others, but also deepen your own understanding. Engaging with a community fosters mutual support, collective wisdom, and shared inspiration, powerful catalysts that can accelerate your inner transformation. If you feel called to take your journey even further, consider exploring recommended books, retreats, or workshops that resonate with this path of self-discovery. Remember, each step you take, big or small, contributes to your evolution and leads you closer to living from your authentic core. Trust that the process, no matter how turbulent, is laying the foundation for a life rooted in truth, love, and wholeness. So I encourage you now, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and become part of this growing community dedicated to awakening the true self. Together, we can create a ripple effect, transforming not only ourselves, but inspiring others to discover their divine potential. Your journey of deep self-awareness and spiritual awakening is precious, and your participation here amplifies that potential. Thank you for being here, for opening your heart to these profound truths, and for undertaking the extraordinary work of transformation. Remember, the most extraordinary change begins with a single step, a single act of intention. So subscribe now, and walk forward boldly into the rich, mysterious, and beautiful adventure of becoming your truest self. Your transformation begins today.